check this out. The leaves are still on the trees, and yet Toronto has had its first major snowstorm, dumping 13.6 centimeters of snow on the city. As a matter of fact, this is a record snowfall, and that's very rare for this early in November, November the 11th. Usually it's not until December that Toronto gets a major snowfall. Usually for the whole month of November, Toronto only gets about 7.5 centimeters. So we had this large amount of snow dumped in one day. And the temperature was about minus 5 degrees Celsius, but it's going to go down to minus 15 Celsius. So that is really cold. That is not a normal temperature for Toronto. I've never seen this before. Check out the green snow. This is the first time that leaves were still on the trees, and after the snow fell, all the leaves started falling off, and now, as you can see here, the snow is actually green in parts, and lots of leaves all over the place. Usually by the time the snow falls in Toronto, all the leaves have fallen off the trees, and I've never seen that, so this is really weird to see. Snow covered by leaves. The leaves fell off immediately after it snowed. Check that out. Look at all the green on the snow. That is weird. You're having weird weather. I've never seen this before. Look at that. Completely full of green. Wow. It's kind of cool, but kind of scary at the same time. Just green everywhere, green leaves everywhere. It's supposed to warm up pretty soon, so the snow will not stay on the ground for very long. Usually in Toronto, it snows, it stays for 1 or 2 days, and then it melts fairly fast because the temperature goes up enough. You don't see a lot of snow. As a matter of fact, last year we probably had maybe 2 to 3 weeks of snow for the whole winter. So over the last 10 years, I've noticed that Toronto doesn't have a lot of snow on the ground. You see people riding bikes year-round. Right now I'm walking up Yonge Street. You're seeing all the towers. I'm heading to the subway. Now the good thing about living in Toronto is there are underground pathways right up basically near Yonge Street that go all the way up to Dundas Street to the Eaton Centre. So all these people here walking along can actually walk underground and not have to deal with the cold weather. But even on the coldest days in Toronto, people still walk outside, even if they're heading up to the Eaton Centre. A lot of people don't want to walk underground, so the streets are still full of people, even on the coldest days. But you do have the option, if it's snowing or raining or really, really like minus 20 degrees, really cold, just go underground and you're in climate-controlled conditions. Here we're on the corner of King Street. All these office towers in Toronto, most of them, all have underground tunnels with shopping, restaurants, all kinds of food courts and places to walk and not have to deal with the cold weather. So that's one thing. We're actually really lucky because we get to avoid the really cold days. And if you live in one of the condos along here, you can go out with no coat, go do your shopping, you can go see a sporting event, you can go to your doctor's office, you can go to the bank, basically do all the things you have to do without even going outside. So you don't even need a winter coat. A lot of people do that. They move to the downtown towers and they just basically live a pretty easy life, just staying underground for 3-4 months. Here we are heading into the subway, which takes you also to the underground city called the PATH system. I've made some videos about that. And it goes for miles and miles and miles in all directions, almost right down to the lake, and as far north as Dundas Street, the Eaton Centre. And then it also goes west to Metro Hall. Yeah, so it's pretty far out. Pretty extensive system. So We are fortunate to have that because we don't have to freeze our asses off on the really cold days. Now, I filmed a bit in the subway, left the camera rolling just to show people what it's like inside the Toronto subway system. It's called the TTC, Toronto Transit Commission, and I got there just in time. The subway was just arriving, so you get to see it's pretty clean and well maintained. I've seen other cities, like let's say New York and Chicago. When you compare Toronto's subway system, like the way it looks and how it's maintained and stuff, it's much nicer than a lot of other places that I've seen. Like some of New York's subway stations are scary, and Chicago's are mostly above ground. So you freeze your ass off in those Chicago stations, and they're really like pretty basic. So Toronto has mostly protected subway stations, and they're pretty clean, well run, maintained, looking pretty good. And also we have the new trains now where you can walk through the whole train from front to back. If one part of the train is crowded, you just walk to a different area and you'd be able to find a seat.
Line 1, to advance.
Now we're back out in St. Lawrence neighborhood, checking out the park. All the snow. Look at the leaves on the trees. Weird. It's so weird to see snow on the ground and all those leaves on the trees. The sidewalks have not really been cleared, so you gotta watch out for slipping on ice or snow. It wasn't too bad. The worst days are when it's 0 and then it rains and then it goes like to -2, because then you got a thin sheet of ice, and that's when it's really slippery. That's when you can really fall and really hurt yourself. So on days like this when it's really cold, you just have snow, but you don't have it melting to water and then forming ice when it gets cold. And speaking of slippery, it's been reported by the news that there have been over 400 car crashes just in the last 24 hours due to the snow. My God, that is crazy. All the greenery's still out, the trees, the bushes and stuff. The city was not prepared for Mother Nature. I don't know if this is due to climate change or what. It could be, because they said there's a lot of weird things happening weather-wise. Either extreme cold, extreme heat. Climate change is causing a lot of weird things to happen in the city, all over the world. Look at Australia. They're having forest fires. California, forest fires. Even British Columbia now has a lot of fires. Here we are at the corner of Yonge Street. So we are heading north on Yonge Street. So you get a pretty good view of, how much snow and how fast it melts. See, it melts fairly fast if you're in the major core of the city. It's already starting to melt there. And the snow does not stop cyclists. I still saw a fair amount of people cycling and doing their thing. We're walking now basically through beside Toronto's financial district. That's where the office towers are straight ahead. The subway runs underground along Yonge Street. So Yonge Street is the main street in Toronto. Now we're in the Church Wellesley area. Still a lot of snow on the ground there. The areas that have higher foot traffic and higher car traffic usually have snow areas where the snow is melted. The less foot traffic, the longer the snow stays. So at least the sidewalks there are pretty good to walk on. There's not too much snow or ice on the sidewalks there. I guess there's enough people walking there that melts the snow. Okay, that's the end of our look at Toronto's historic snowfall. Early snowfall. Adios, YouTube.